So I'm not.
Go live a little early just to make sure. Here, there's a pen here. I know I have some shirts that don't have pockets, and then I. Oh, good. I handicapped went the wrong way after I was out on Sunday. And now it's 23. 23 pounds. Not great. But I did beat Jim. That's just what I did. And I did beat Bill. Oh, he just texted me. She's like, Wave, I see you. Jim looks good. Are you sure your camera's on correctly there, B? So we got one person watching us. It's B. That's good. Hopefully she'll go easy on us. I know. Well, and that's why this process is already been involved. Now I'm going to definitely one. Yeah, the message tonight will be that it's not over yet. We're in the process of. Oh, no, we're just going the other way. Yeah, we just wanted to get. I mean, it'd be a major renovation, not just I wonder. I think we got enough.
You got enough cord to extend it?
Here, Rob. Hey, Loretta. How are you? Hey, guys, how are you? You thought we were going to have this evening?
This will reach the back of the room by
If you have a comment or something you want to talk about, close that microphone as possible. We're 5 minutes. Yeah. So we're supposed to have a call for public hearing this week. I personally very interested about this. I'm not getting good feedback. This is so good. We had a hard time with crowds, our feelings, and the content. That's something that I think about. If the owner happens to 2 to 20, and the only one person to still go to 100. So it's not, it's really a business. Oh, yeah, there's no way you can have a parking lot. Right, sure. The site plan is shared. Like 2 more minutes. I don't want to get ahead of it. Oh, yeah, it's going to be. But what we're doing next week is essentially respond to such a thing. So that would start the conversation. It's not anything else. So no, I think we can go ahead with that. And that will start all that conversation. I don't know. Yeah. However much revenue they need. Well, I have 7. You guys have 7? We're good to start. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to this work session. This is an important night for us. The board is going to discuss the proposals we received for our new public town hall and public safety building. In some ways, this seems like a very, very, very long journey, because it is. We've been talking about this for 5, 6 years now. As you all know, something called COVID got in the way, and now inflation is here. So there's some challenges that we're in a very different spot than we were 4 years ago on this. And I'll give you some updates along the way on some revenue sources. As I think many of you might know, we've had a $1.5 million grant from the state that is still tied up. It's an 8-year-old grant that got approved, but it's tied up, and we can talk about that as we get into it. I'm up here because I'm controlling both the PowerPoint, and also we're streaming on YouTube, so this will be on the website. But for the folks watching YouTube, the town board is here in their at their table. They'll be chiming in, and there's a microphone there if you guys can use the microphone so that the computer, can pick up what you're saying, even though they can't see you. So as we go through it, town board questions, comments as we go through, and then we'll open up to the public in the room. And I just want to start by saying this is the most important part of the process for the town board, is hearing from the public and getting input from the public on what you think about this. And the second point I want to make before we start is this is a restarting point for us, even though we've been at this for many years. Things are different. 3 years ago, this was a $6-7 million project. It's not that anymore. And so we'll talk about that. But as we restart this, understand this, what you're going to see is preliminary. We're working with each of the developers on trying to work through some of the issues that you'll see we'll put up here. But we like the folks to be engaged as we go through it. So with that, let me put that there. I don't think we need to turn any lights off. You guys can see that all okay, right? Okay. So let's start with the new town hall and safety building complex. The town had a couple goals in this process. First of all, we believe we need a building that's about 24,000 square feet to house everything we have in this building, including the police department down on the other side of the building here. We also wanted to find a place that would allow us for future expansion, because one of the things we learned here is that we're very much locked on this property and there's no opportunity to expand. This building was repurposed from a moving theater in 1984 to become a town hall. Interestingly enough, we have plans here that show that as early as 1992, the town board was already looking at expanding, because it wasn't adequate in 1984 when they got in here, and I think they realized that pretty quickly. The town board never went forward with those 1992 plans, but we do have them, and that just is an indication of where we are, that this was something that was needed from that far back, apparently. We want to look at redevelopment of this site. This is a town goal of ours, to spur additional economic development. One of the things is we do not want to leave this place empty. So it's very important that there's something that occurs here that is beneficial to the town. And we also want to use our ability of where we go, if we stay here, if we go somewhere else, to kind of be a catalyst for more development and be part of something bigger. And we're open to purchase or lease. The town board has the option of outright just purchasing it for cash, leasing it over 20, 30 years with a buyout. We do have capital reserve set aside. We do have a grant that potentially, hopefully, gets loose from the state of New York. And then we always have bonding. And I'll go over a little bit about what that would mean to the taxpayer, knowing that we don't have an exact cost yet, because I'm going to present you with where we started, but it's not going to be where we ended, or we do end. There was two-part process to this. We went on what we call an RFQ to begin with, which is a request for qualifications. That allows us not to just go with the lowest bidder. You know, sometimes when you go with the lowest bidder, it's not always the best product. And so we wanted to first make sure we had the folks who are bidding on this qualified. That was important. If you're going to get into a building for 30 years, 40 years, you want the person who's doing this qualified. And then the step two would be the RFPs, which we're going to go over today, which is the request for proposals. 4 firms responded to the RFQ. They were all invited to the RFP. 1 dropped out in between, and so we had 3 RFPs that we have been assessing and been working on. And so we don't need that one. I have too many remotes up here. I just want to review, and I don't know why this came out this way, so I apologize, but where we are with our Capitol building. This space is cramped. There's no question about it. We can go through a long list of what occurs here every day operationally, and we've done that in the past, and we can continue to do this, but understand that the employees are working in cramped conditions. Our residents come into cramped conditions. When this room is in use, particularly for court session, that entire hallway is full of defendants. Residents can't get through to the counter easily. We have a whole host of safety issues in the police department. We don't have adequate space in the police department to handle any bookings, to handle any defendants, to handle day-to-day operations. And one of the most egregious things actually is we don't have any space for a female locker room for our police department. So we have inequity right now, which is a big issue, labor issue. There's no question about it. We've asked them to be patient with us. We're working on it. But there was a time when we didn't have female officers. We have 4 female officers now. 4. They all share one locker room. It's not appropriate, and it's something we have to deal with. We lack, as I mentioned, basic space for meeting room. The other day, CSCA and management were trying to meet, and PBA had to meet, and there's only one meeting room, and we couldn't all meet, and we had to go find space off-site. We don't have enough room to meet. We don't have the locker room. We don't have the lobby staging. We don't have proper workspace for employees. We have our workflow is not efficient. That's a huge issue for us, and it's just not effective. We're not ADA compliant in any way, shape, or form. We could potentially get an ADA, compliant for this doorway, easy enough, but 90% of the building is not compliant. We have a meeting room upstairs. That's our major public meeting room. It's not ADA compliant. We have a tremendous amount of deferred cost in this building. The roof is shot. It leaks anytime it rains. We have continuing cleaning up floods in the workspace over here in this front hallway in particular. That alone is $500,000 to $700,000 replacement. So one of the things I want to set the stage for is if the decision is to stay here, that is not without cost. Never was. We've deferred a lot of maintenance. Our entire parking lot needs to be redone. That's another $500,000. Our facilities people believe there's about $4 million probably in deferred cost here. We are looking at ways of trying to expand on this little lot, but we really can't get the space we need because we're kind of locked in here. We don't have the security in the back. Our police area should be fenced. It is not. Our judges should have separate entrances. They don't. There's a whole bunch of safety audits that we don't necessarily meet. And so these are all things that we're considering when we want to make this decision. But staying here is not the no-cost option. It's a lower-cost option, but there will be millions of dollars in deferred maintenance here that will need to be done. We also feel we're disconnected from community connection here. So what we believe, and we can talk about this for a little while, is that these buildings and facilities should really engage the community more than it does. This room is used every single night. There can be no community meeting in here. It's either court, planning board, town board, ZBA, and that's it. So we can't host community events here. We can't do anything that would allow folks to come in and use the facility because there's just no, this is it. This is it.
We want to be more connected to the community. We want to offer more amenities to the community. And one of the biggest ones is the storage issue. We have no storage issue, or no storage space, I'm sorry to say. We are using boxes that are piling up, that are creating walls and hallways because there's nowhere to put them. The history center that we have up on the next property over is antiquated, and that needs to be knocked down, and we need to rebuild that anyway. So that's another opportunity for us to address all of our issues. But we have significant storage issues in this building that need to be addressed. So those are all the things that we're looking at right now. And this is why we want to potentially redesign the entire town hall or town center campus. As I said, our current building is inadequate, does not fit the town's needs. It presents significant safety concerns to our residents, to our employees, and to the general public. And this current lot is just too small for expansion. We can't get significant expansion here out of this current lot. So our first respondent, and we're just going to call them respondents right now because we're not going to get too deep into who's doing what or where, but the first respondent has come in with a 24,000 square foot town hall and public safety building adjacent to the Schenectady Airport on Airport Road. The redevelopment of the existing town property here at this building is to include townhouses, retail, and commercial buildings, which include 14 units of residential and a 15,000 plus or minus square foot commercial retail here at this property. This potential respondent here allows for future development on an additional almost 5 acres. The building could be completed in about 1 year, and a $27 square foot lease for 20 years with 1 5-year renewal option would leave us absorbing an additional $656,000 a year in new spending if we did the lease. And if you do the math on that, that's a $13 million project. We do get $200,000 in fit up, so that is just core and shell. The fit up, we get another $200,000 credit for this existing property. So that's the trade off in that particular proposal. So it's a little hard to see, I think, but this is Airport Road right here. This is, you would know, as C2. This is the return. This is the property we're talking about with potential site expansion in the future. So this would be on Airport Road. This is the hockey rink, county hockey rink, Bruno Manufacturing. This is becoming built up now with more and more development, and the town hall would be potentially part of that if this was a successful choice. This would be what the site plan roughly would look like for here on Glenridge Road. This is the library. As you all know, this is the current town hall. This would be the retail space, office building back here, and we would have condominiums here, which is right now our history center is right up in here. So this would be what the redevelopment of this potential space would look like. As we look at Respondent 1, we see some pros. It meets the needs and allows for future expansion. That's important. It allows for additional for sale residential properties, commercial stuff here, and it is the lowest cost option. We do have traffic concerns with this one, and that is right now, Airport Road is dead-ended. It's closed. This is a county road. In our discussion, we had talked about needing to really, if we were to decide or go here, we would need to have at least a right in, right out. People can't see Town Hall and not know how to get to it. There's a circuitous route that you can come up here to Social Plaza and come back down and around all this way, or you can come in Thomas Corners down here and come up this way, but there's no direct access right now. You have to go around. And I know that would be difficult for many of our visitors are seniors. And I think that would be difficult. So we would have to engage the county on reopening this. There would be opposition in the return because they closed it because of opposition in the return to the traffic that came out of there. But that is one of the things we have to work through. Respondent 2 actually is a 33,000 square foot town hall safety and building complex that was proposed. It could be completed in about 16 months, and this one would cost $23 million. So we're going a little bit up here in cost. This is what it would look like. It's actually proposed right here at this is again our history center. This is Town Hall now. This is the library. And this is what they propose is pretty much a massive building. This one came in with a little bit more than what we really need, and we're working with the folks now to really tighten up on that. But this amenity they offer is some outdoor space, public space for the public to, like a little pocket park outside of Town Hall. And that would allow for all the space we need. There would really be no future expansion here, but again, most of it is already being proposed. So I don't think we would need that. Certainly meets our space needs, but it is the highest cost option. And it doesn't allow for redevelopment of town property. So we would still be responsible for trying to get this property sold here. The other issue I have with it is the curb cut here on Glen Ridge. This is just an accident waiting to happen. That's right at the peak of the hill. So if we do this, again, access issues, we would need to continue to have our access where we have it now and bring it around the library. I don't see where this would be safe, allowed by DOT. This is a state highway, but this is right where that hill is. So that's a potential issue. Perhaps the county will allow us to come across here and get to it instead of coming around back, but those are issues we have to deal with in this type of plan. Respondent 3. This is an adaptive reuse of the McKeel School building. 36,400 square feet was proposed, again, more than what we needed. The redevelopment of the existing town properties here would include 112 apartments and 12,000 square feet of commercial. This could be completed in about 30 months, so it's going to take the longest to get done. The price on this came in at $23.90 for 30 years, which would mean that we would have a new annual cost in our budget of $869,000. That's a $26 million project over the 30 years. And this one, because of its location at the McKeel School, will give us connectivity to our other town 2 parks, our Anderson Park and our Indian Meadows Park. Approximately $750,000 for existing town property is in this proposal. So that's what they would pay for this property, for their redevelopment of the property. And this gives you the overview of the McKeel property. If you're all familiar with it, this is Cypress, right into McKeel. This is Anderson Park. This is Indian Meadows Park. And this would allow us for this campus. This would give us a tremendous amount of space for future development as it's proposed now. But again, it's over, the square footage is too big for us right now. And with the other issue, and we'll probably get into it, well, before we do that, the other issue is, much like the first respondent, we have access issues. We made it clear to the developer that we cannot use Cypress as the way to enter or exit this property. First of all, hardly anyone will find it. That's one problem. Second problem is our officers cannot respond going hot through this long, very long suburban neighborhood. And number 3, these folks are not going to be accepting of all that traffic coming through. Now, I know everyone says it was a school. It was a school. It was a school 30 years ago. The traffic pattern today is not going to be something that the folks in that neighborhood are going to be very supportive of. So we will have to find, one of the challenges of this one, we have to find access out. And does that mean through Anderson Park to Van Buren, or does it mean trying to find a way out here to Drums? Those are things that we're looking at now. Because that access, and that's the major issue with that building, is the access through the neighborhood. So that's one of the biggest challenges. Here on this site, what you would see actually is an expansion, because all of this property is not, this is our property here. These folks are talking about getting this piece of property behind us. This would be all apartments. It would be an extension of what's there now. And then there would be a mixed-use building here. And it looks like, I don't know if I just see on there, but another outbuilding there. There would be commercial or for the public pavilion or something. But this would be mostly residential with some mixed use. The pros here is a good adaptive reuse of a building that's currently blighted and attracts vandalism. There's no question about it. We have got to do something about that McKeel building. Additional town land connection to our parks is huge. I think it would be a tremendous campus for us to be able to add more park amenities. Creative financing using CIDC. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to have to defer to the finance people to know what that is. I don't have that right now, but it's a community type of financing that we can talk about if we get down the road on this one. As I mentioned, the cons are access to the building. Difficult to repurpose the existing building to meet our space needs, meaning that we're going to end up with a lot of extra space. That's not something that we really are interested in. We cannot be in the real estate business. We can't be in the rental landlord business. Town is very specific on what it can and can't do, and it cannot speculate on land purchase. It cannot develop. It cannot rent. It cannot do anything like that. We're only supposed to have the space that we need to conduct the business on behalf of the residents of the town. That is it. So that's a little bit of a challenge right now. And the con is the density of the redevelopment on the existing town property. It's a little bit heavy on apartments. You know, one of the conversations we're having is for perhaps, you know, a little more condo mix in there or more for sale type of property, So that's kind of where we are with that. So considerations going forward. Costs were obviously much higher than we anticipated and much higher than we were just a couple of years ago. So that's one issue we're dealing with. Inflation and post-COVID have drastically increased our construction costs. And there's no way around that. And that's going to be true for fixing this building. We're still going to have the same material costs. We're going to have the same labor costs. We're just going to have to deal with that going forward. Finance rates have gone up sharply. We all know that since this began. So our carrying cost is going to be higher than we anticipated. 3 years ago, we're at 1.5. We're at 3.5 now, maybe 4 by the time we get there. So financing rates are going to have an impact here as well. And the question we always come back to, and I just want to let folks know that this town board's always looking at this very sharply. Do we need it or don't we need it? And are there other alternatives? Could the town repurpose this existing town hall? We've talked about that. Add a second building. There was a proposal 3 years ago where the police station would stay here in the courts and we would build an administrative building up at the history center. We would split operations then. And the problem with that is that now you have 2 heating units, you have 2 cooling units, you have 2 of everything. You have 2 buildings you have to maintain. It's like owning 2 houses, living in 2 houses instead of 1 house. You're just going to double your operational costs. So that's a concern, but that was an option. Do residents want town hall to stay in its current location or be redeveloped elsewhere, more in line with our town center, or have this property, redeveloped more in line with town center guidance line? Are there more commercial applications that can be done here? And can we reduce the anticipating program requirements? And that's what we're spending a lot of time right now talking to our folks about, the respondents. What can we do differently? We're trying to find partners in some ways to join us in the building. And some of these buildings are bigger than what we anticipated. So those are all things that we're looking at. Last thing I just want to put out there before we open it up for discussion. How we're going to pay for this is really the question I think most residents have. And we don't have that answer yet as far as the final decision of how we're going to do it. I alluded to earlier, we have capital reserves. We've done a really good job over the years putting aside money for capital reserves. We have a grant that we potentially are trying to get from New York State. It was approved 8 years ago, $1.5 million. It got tied up in politics, and it's still tied up in politics. I'm working very hard with Senator Breslin's office to try to get that money released. Senator Breslin is a majority, is a longest tenured majority senator in a majority conference. That money should be able to come our way quickly. There's no reason why Senator Breslin could not move that money. It requires two things as we stand here right now. The majority leader in the state Senate needs to sign off on it, and the governor of the state of New York needs to sign off on it. So those are the only two things that are holding that up. It's been approved, and it's been sitting there for 8 years. And that's kind of put us on hold as well, waiting for it for that long. But I'll just give you the guide stick that we are looking at. For every $1 million right now that we borrow for this project, for every million, it's $2.20 a year to the average resident. So if we borrow $10 million, that's $22 a year to the average resident in town of Owensboro. If we have a $13 million project, we put $3 million in it, we borrow 10, the tax increase would be $22 a year for an average home, which I'm not sure is a deal breaker, but that's something the residents are going to have to weigh in on. If we can get that down, it's less. You know, if we get into an $8 million building, have some cash into it, and maybe $10 a time. We can't say that yet. We don't know where we're going to be with the borrowing. But that gives you a guide stick as to where we are. I know people are kind of thinking, oh my God, this is going to be tragic. We're going to be in that area. It's just get everyone understanding where we're going to be. So that's really all I had for a formal proposal. I think we can open it up to the board with questions, comments, and if anyone here in the room wants to weigh in, just raise your hand and I can call on. Anyone say anything to react?
Well, I guess my reaction is it's very expensive, and it's unfortunate that we're in the time frame we're in, post the pandemic and post we're in the midst of unprecedented rise in inflation. So I think a fourth option needs to be vetted and explored, and that is, what would we do if we stay here? What would be the cost estimate for catching up with the maintenance here, and then would there be any kind of a redesign or something that could be done here to improve the workflow, improve the storage situation, improve public access, make the court operate better, in other words, away from the regular governmental business. So I'd like to see that laid out as a fourth option, with a more detailed cost estimate on that. And then we've got, four options to compare, both functionally, operationally, and then the third would be cost, obviously, as well.
So we're working on that as we speak. The laundry list is some of the things I touched on already. The roof needs to be redone. The parking lot needs to be redone. We need to figure out where we really run into problems is how do we give more space to the police department for the locker room that they need. They need much more updated evidence storage space. There's certain ways that Office of Court Administration and Department of Justice requires how things are done now. Body cams, believe it or not, are coming in as a mandate shortly, and that's going to require a whole bunch of different electronic storage, server rooms that we don't have. So one of the problems is the constraint of the space. We just don't have it. One of the things that they looked at in 1992 was putting two wings on the front. So Vicky's office right here, wing would go out a little bit. Over on this corner of the building, a wing would go out a little bit, and that was supposed to give more meeting room space. But as soon as we touch this building, we have ADA compliance issues that we don't have right now. So those bathrooms are goners. We would have to redo all that somehow. Huge amount of cost in that. That meeting room would no longer, we actually have a bigger problem. Because now that meeting room would no longer be eligible because of the ADA issues that would come into play. The problem is there's not enough space to get where we need to be. We could build a pole barn up. I've talked about this. On the other property, we have another 4 acres on the other side of the library. We could build a pole barn and put all our storage in there. We can deal with the storage issue, but operationally,
Well, again, that's what I said about that.
we're at about, I think our property people, Tom and Craig, estimate, $4 million. $4 million to get you, it's the same issue we dealt with before, to get you not even a quarter of the way what you need, and then you leave the future, with Band-Aids and rubber bands, after you spend $4 million. Those are the issues.
I guess part of my point is it's going to be an obvious question out in the public as it should be. And then, we can say, we explore this option, here are the details of that. So everybody can do their prepared.
No, it definitely needs to be done, and we're close. We have a good idea, $4 million, but we're not going to get there as far as all the space that's needed.
Even with those wings.
Even with those wings, potentially the problem is it becomes then the ADA stuff I talked about. Now these bathrooms are no longer, now let's figure out how to put bathrooms in the space somewhere. All sorts of issues still come into play. We don't have enough space but we're growing as employees because the town's growing and we just don't have a place to put anyone. We don't have desk space. Yes, sir. Well, go ahead.
Aaron Gruber, I live in Black Road, I live in Button, but the absence in this discussion, pretty exciting month. I want to speak for all the neighbors, but I live on a system, I don't have kids, and I would be glad to pay the better education for the children. Happy with my water, think it's the price, the cost so much, I'm happy to pay a little more, especially $22 a year, nothing. Doesn't scare me at all. And I want to know more, that the whole presentation, what a challenge, it's a terrible spot, we have all these deficiencies, oh, it's horrible. How much is it? What is the intended idea? How we want to present ourselves as a town road, as we speak to taxpayers, commercially and residentially, and use it to drive more services. Those are, how do you want to present it? Not like kind of find us,
Right.
If you have enough office space,
Right.
but could you speak to this, put aside the budget for a moment, I know that's hard.
Yep.
And talk about what we want rental to look like to build it and what the public is.
So it's a good question and good comments. And I think, the town board,
It's exciting.
Yes. Yes. Yep. The town board has spent a lot of time in discussing just that. If we do something, then what is the vision, why, and all this kind of stuff. We can start right off the bat. This town hall is not indicative of the town of Glenville. Yeah. Well, so not this. And so we're trying to strike a balance between something that speaks to a growing town of 30,000 people that conducts business every day on behalf of those folks, but not opulent. We made it very clear with the developers. We're not going for, I'll just give you an example. Niskuna Town Hall overbuilt. or horrible design. It's a beehive with a lot of wasted space and big archy stairways. We want to be respectful of the taxpayer, but project a growing professional town, of something that's conducive to the people that live here and that they can be proud of. Absolutely. I think when you see the designs, when we get to that point, you're going to see that. That's where you're going to see that kind of sizzle you're talking about, is each of the designs that have come in are all very attractive. And they all will be, residents will be very proud of them, all of the designs. I mean, we're not going to do something half-baked, just in today's day and age. That's coming. I think that's the next phase. What we want to do right now is set the stage with, okay, are we willing to go down this road? And once we do, now next meeting is going to be, let's show what we can be. And I think you're going to be impressed by that. So I hope that answers your question, but we definitely want to be respectful. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, in response to your question, what's implied in the very process of review is that's why we went through the RFP process, because we wanted to see, what opportunities existed out there for us to realize our vision. I don't want to see this town hall just be, a common piece of infrastructure. I saw it as a way to maybe spur additional development for the community, because so many people come and go from a town center, a town community building, that can be the impetus for other things to happen, other development in a positive manner. And so, is there that opportunity out there for us to do that rather than have a very, closed view of this and say, well, yeah, we're just going to have a functional town hall, and move on. No, this is an opportunity, in the spectrum of this community development, to do something significant and maybe be transformational. And I just want to see if there's that opportunity.
Yes, sir.
Peter Moran, I think two comments. One, the multi-building option, I don't think that's very supply. And when you go back 30 years, females are going out 30 years from now, you really need to have building things next to together. Maybe you just put parking and that's another option that's really away. The second thing is, as it's growing, and it's 30 years in the future, maybe something more to the community center that goes to bring residents. For example, maybe you have community theater at the park, and you could have schools that rent out of the facility, bring residents out there. That's other things that might be. So look at cities, space, and people. When they think of something like that, so the town, I think, in 30 years, it's going to be much different.
Right. That's exactly the community connection we talked about earlier. One of the things that dawned on me was reaching out to the school districts, because I know the school districts need classroom space, non-traditional classroom space. They need evening space. They need other things for folks to use in their, continuing education. Maybe there's a way of partnering with another, we've tried to partner with the village. It has to be said. We've tried to partner with the village repeatedly. It's just not going to happen. But there's school districts, there's county. We like to talk to the county about this library. It's right in the middle of this whole thing. Maybe we can share community space with the county library. We're talking about private industry coming in. We've always talked about that. So there's a lot of partnering that I think we can do out there that can be a part of this. Absolutely.
To touch on your comment about the two separate buildings, and I think it's important to look at that because you need to look at all the options available, but you also have to consider what's the trade-off for having interdepartmental efficiency, having everybody. There are meetings, there are things that happen where you have to have members from multiple departments present. So there will be a trade-off there. If we have to move from one building to the other to have certain meetings take place, is that an efficient use of our time? I'm not saying yes or no, but it's a consideration. Yes or no.
If I may, certainly now it's understand
You mean just from virtual options? Sure, sure, and I agree, Zoom has been great, but I mean, I also, having been on virtual options, there are some things that you hash out, and you let people in a room, you can get things done that are difficult over a remote option. I see both, I'm not saying one or the other, but I just think it's something that we have to consider all those things together.
When you think about the future, staying on the remote, I don't mean to interrupt. When you think about the future, I work remote, my boss is in Arizona. I'm on a meeting all day long, remote, on Teams for 15 years. And we've increased that. As COVID happened, I'm a trainer now for this company, and we do it remote. So I have people all through the country on this meeting, and that helps too. So when you think about the future, like, are you going to do large meetings like once in a while? Sure. And I hear what you're saying. In person, it's super important. But in the future,
One of the things,
Going back to the animal side, I think what we're trying to do right now is get the benefits, what we're talking about right now. We're thinking how to really maximize efficiency. Right now, we have a proposed meeting, and then we will start with one. If we can have these, now we can have the meeting back with one, but we're trying to get the point that we want to, can agree that we, because if people disagree, then you can't discuss the point. Because they don't need to, right now, you have to do it. You just try to communicate all the other things that we discussed. And then we go to the way the town has grown over the last 30 years. With the use of the and other things that can be essential of we have emergency response. Right. But I think it's the first
so just, yeah, I'm sorry, I want to make a point, I'm going to lose it on the remote option, and then we'll get back to you. The number one question I get new employees who are interviewing is, can I work remotely? The question is, absolutely not. You cannot. Now, I understand 30 years, every world may look different and meetings may be different, but generally speaking, we're here to serve the public. Public has to come in this building. They have to present ID for a lot of the transactions. We have state programs that we have to do in a certain way. Anything through the clerk's office has to be done in person. Almost everything has to be done in person because of the way the town delivers its services, the way it has to deliver its services. Our police officers are always going to be here. That's never going to go remote. Now, again, things can change in 20 years and we can do our town board meetings have to be in person. Planning board meetings have to be in person. Court has to be in person. 90%, most of what we do has to be in person. So for the foreseeable future, if we're making decisions on, if we're making $20 million decisions on capital improvements, we have to do with what we have today, not trying to guess where we may be, because you're going to guess wrong potentially, and that's going to be costly. Let me just go back because I cut Amanda off.
Yes, so what I'm talking about, I'm actually been on COVID. And over COVID, we learned that we had the potential in remote options to affect and further the entire country for the companies we wanted. We think it's special for us because one of the biggest lessons we learned is that what made us stand out was our sense of community. And having people actually come in and feel like they were a part of something. And I think that's really important in a context of being a town center. Having that daily connection, not actually seeing people, getting to know them, interacting with the counselor. I think there's some of that just can't be replaced over virtual. Some of it can, but having.
I'm not saying we can discuss something now.
I'm not saying you are. I'm just kind of presenting a different point of view where I personally learned the lesson that there is something to be said for interacting with certain spots, especially when you're trying to talk to the community and interpersonal.
Sir, back, yeah, shoot, sir.
Yeah, real sort of funny, because this is language at school. This thing about one building is that, I think, is wrong. I think we need to look at multiple buildings. Why, I'm thinking it's connected to town. Connected. Yeah, they don't need to be marked full for period of the second. town hall where you need to put it. Okay, yeah, it would be nice to have a professional team, but it is then not critical to have what's called run for them now. Okay, fine. I do think multiple buildings is better for other reasons. We problem here, we got one building. Yeah, 5 buildings, one meeting. That's so bad. Yeah, I think multiple buildings, multiple sites, much better than putting everything in one. Right, with especially with all your ratings in one basket.
Oh, good comment.
Could I just
Yes.
ask you, just like, the gentleman that mentioned revenue, with the excess space on the IT, becoming part of the school system, with nonprofit based that, within the community, that gets more percent of the town, the landlord. But is there a way that the town could produce revenue by sharing the space, maybe they take it out, maybe the town?
Not produce revenue, but could condo the space so that each has their own costs. So the school district would condo a room or whatever, and that would be their cost. But we couldn't like be a landlord to rent out excess space, and then take that in. But there are arrangements where we can condo it.
So essentially, that you relinquishing ownership responsibility of certain parts of the space.
Basically, if we need 23,000
Yeah.
square feet and it's 36,000 square feet, then we only take the 23,000, and then you condo off the rest of it, and that goes to whoever. Correct?
Have you had a conversation with the county about moving the library?
Tried.
And then you have that in space. It feels like the library was smacking the middle of everything.
Yeah.
As a small building, if they essentially need something else, maybe it's the medical home, so that would be my first question. I'm assuming it's used something like that. And then the other question is, can we industry going up? Which is
Yeah, that cost would be significant. You know, the elevator alone, that would be required at that point. It just would, you know, there really is no cheap option, and that would be pretty expensive as well. But the county would be another great partner in a building like this. There's no question about it. I mean, library space, they don't need the space they used to have. How about, you know, technology? People are reading things on tablets and things. You don't need all the books like you had, but people need community space. I can't tell you how many times a Boy Scout, a Girl Scout, a Rotary, they're looking for meeting space. They're looking for a space to do something.
And I guess that's why, of what I've heard so far, what's intriguing is the reuse of the Lucia school. The opportunities to grow there, not just with internal building space, but on the ground itself for outdoor activities. I mean, I could see a future where, you know, that really transforms into a true community center. And not just a governmental center, but, you know, a great many things are hosted there, and the community kind of starts to rally around that and becomes representative of the town.
That's one of our visions.
So, you know, I could see the potential for that. It's just overcoming the practicalities of access, you know, ending immediate costs, make that work. Maybe it can be a phased program, you know, over time. You know, those are all potential.
One reason I don't like that idea of the
No, I don't disagree with you.
on a sort of the access, part of entry is I have to do out of here, which is people see when they come to the end of it. You know, and I think it was a great idea, but they had to have to look for the, I think it's not, but the community, your point, anybody got out there, not that building or, contract. That puts them further away from the employees that are called. It would probably be better, very well appreciated.
So, yeah, exactly. So, I'm in that neighborhood, we would love to see something built up in the building. I actually love the idea of like, oh, town center is here, take the dog park trail, oh, here we are here, and then we continue on
In the park, not where the, not like through where the dog pen is, but there's space around it.
Yeah.
Yeah, potentially. You know, this is also part of a bigger vision the town has for how to enhance public space. One of them is, you know, trying to find an amphitheater. I think you referred to it earlier. Where can people have community events, community plays, bands, things like that? Right now we use Indian Meadows, but it's kind of makeshift. You know, this can be part of that. We're looking at Legacy Park right now for a lot of that. We're developing Legacy Park, which is on Dutch Meadows. Walking trails there as well. That's another amenity that we're looking at. But we're trying to really balance all of these community needs with an overarching like capital plan. This doesn't stand on its own. You know, one of the biggest things we're trying to find is more park space, believe it or not, for softball fields. We have Scotia Glenville girls softball field. They're looking for softball fields. We can't fit them in anywhere, any park, anywhere. Cypress, for example, has a lot of space for new fields. And pickleball's another one. We can't build enough pickleball courts, so we need more pickleball courts. So we need all this space to try to help meet the community demand. We are putting up our disc frisbee golf course down in Indian Meadows starting next week. So we're going to have a frisbee golf thing there. So that's kind of cool. But each of them have their benefits. Each of them have their downfalls. Staying here, same thing. It's just going to be a question of what Sid is saying, getting some sort of consensus. You know, if you spend 2 minutes on Facebook, you know there's no consensus on anything. It's never going to happen. But some sort of reasonable consensus is what we're really looking for. So far, our sense has been, I believe, not a lot of opposition to a new facility of some sort, but we have to make sure we do this right. And I think we're at the point now to pull the trigger on it and get it done with either these proposals, what Jim Martin talked about, proposals staying here, or whatever else can come down the line. Yes, ma'am. Yep. Oh, yeah. Good thought. Tom? Brian, I don't want to out you there, but Brian is our consultant on this, and he's been quietly listening. Going up from an engineer's point of view, any thoughts on that? Yes. So I alluded to it, the property up at the house we own up here. Yeah, so we own another couple acres up here. Prior to COVID, we were this close to going forward on the proposal to redevelop this into the police department and build the administrative building up there for town hall and try to connect the campus to the library and have that. That fell off the drawing board through COVID, and as we came back to it, these are the proposals that came forward. That's not a dead proposal. We have that space over there. There are some limitations, but in fact, one of the proposals is on that property. Well, that's a different one, but this respondent, this is where the History Center is right now, right in this corner. This entire property would be that And then this still is town hall. We still don't have anything. The problem with this proposal is they don't deal with this at all. We would have to try to sell it ourselves. The problem with this building is the same problem we're having with this building. It's not laid out well. It's not useful to anybody. We've tried to sell it repeatedly over the years. It would have to come down. The problem is it's so solid. It's very expensive to take this down. If you all know, this was a movie theater at one time, two movie theaters, one going this way and one going that way. So the floors have fill in them, concrete fill, which adds to the cost of getting rid of this building. So the building appraises for $750,000. The cost to take it down is about $750,000. So, anyone who looks at it is saying, I don't know, if you give it to us, we'll take it down. And so there's not a lot of equity in this thing. But the problem here, which I don't think this respondent really dealt with well, and we have to really drill down on, is the topography here is awful. This requires a tremendous amount of leveling out, which I can't even imagine what that cost would be, but it's basically a hill. So that's the problem with that property. We have some flat space up at where the house is, but to get this size of a building in there, that is going to require quite a lot. And as I said earlier, going up here, we're still going to have traffic flow somehow through here. But the proposal that was done years ago, police station, they used this library and they had an outdoor courtyard connection to a building here. It was much smaller footprint than this because it was like half of that. Let's just say it was 3 parts. And that was a nice design, but we did get into conversations with our facilities people that it is the operation costs are double. You do have, so all the good things you said, the other side of the ledger is there's other challenges to having two sides. It's stupid and it's minor, but some of the employees have talked about, in the wintertime, going back and forth to meetings. Believe it or not, there's a lot of cross-pollination between all the departments. We talked about earlier with Amanda. The departments work together in a very strong partnership. They all support each other, including the police department, the court clerks. One of the problems we have, it's small, but the court clerks are separate from everybody else. The administration's over here. Court clerks are over here. We're in this room. People come in to engage them, pay their ticket, whatever, issue a non-guilty plea or whatever. They come into the town clerk's office, and we say, oh, no, you got to go to the court clerk's office, but you can't get there from here. You got to go outside. And many times you're in, you got to take 2 lefts. You got to try to get in this side of the building, which doesn't have anybody at the door. So you got to ring the doorbell and hope that the person is at their desk or let the person in. It's just crazy inefficient. And so, but the court clerks are a perfect example of someone who works with the police department very closely, but they work with the town clerk's office as well. So planning is upstairs and away, tucked away. They should be closer and working in conjunction with DPW and the building department and the code enforcers, because they all work together. But physically they're apart. It's very, very difficult. But that is an option for 2 buildings. Please, we need that. Yeah. It's
Well, that's what I'm saying, they're working with what they have, and maybe, I'm just throwing it out.
No, it's valid point. It's something we should look at.
I just visualize it, now, what you
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Clear to the airport?
I don't know if we're in the fly zone. We'd have to address that. I don't think we're in the fly zone. No. So I don't think we have, our only town code is 2 stories, but I don't think we're in the fly zone here.
Not the people that's going up. So that's, what would it cost to level this building, to make it be built,
just, I think, thumbnailing it, 750 to take the building down. And then you would take one of these buildings, let's say you take just take the $13 million building as one floor. I don't know what the cost driver would be to put a second floor. I mean, it's more expensive to build 2 floors than 1 floor. But, yeah. So, 750 to take the building down, 13 million to build a new building.
Still got to believe it was all under 26
Yeah.
million. So, like I said, we start to be local.
Yep. Sir?
So I'm gonna take off, and this is the beginning, I see this as a long and sometimes in the future, not tonight, but in the future, there's a painful problem. A lot of this is coming up. I hope that we will continue to engage citizens or future, board members and city supervisor as careers change, it may not happen with this, but that process is really necessary. And the other thing I want to say is when you think about, work at home and Zoom and the cities is working together, I don't think that's more than half of the savings of how things can change in 30 years. I would look at other municipalities and how they walk the retail space, how they have completely transformed the concept around what they can do. And another line, the area which is around what a public building really is, what cost to meet the requirements of it. Not like that.
Okay, well, thank you. Yes, Laura. So, every $10 million, every $1 million is $2.20 to the average house. So $10 million would be $222 a year if we borrowed 10 million. Well, I guess what I'm trying to say to you is we're probably in that area where we're going to end up borrowing $10 million.
I was just thinking like $22 a year for like, well, compared to what we're paying in the village.
Yep.
For utility, you can like double the budget.
Yep.
Or just spend on those a lot. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah,
The other thing,
what I'm paying.
the other thing I've been, oh, I understand that, yes.
$200.
Now, in fairness to my friends in the village, they have a much smaller tax base. And that's the problem. Yeah. Yeah.
For me, that, well, that's not.
To me, it's nothing as an
Yeah,
investment.
part of that tax is those cities built out.
Yeah.
We have no way to reduce that.
Right. Right.
So if we start, if Glendale starts to, eventually, it's going down to the road. We're all built out, we have no way to.
The other thing, one thing I would emphasize though is, and, I said this in the past, we as governmental jurisdictions like to talk within our silos. The taxpayer does not have that luxury. You have the real property tax across the county, and the town. You have state sales tax, you have your personal income tax, you have all these taxes to pay. So I understand it's only $22 for, whatever for the town silo, but the taxpayer has to pay all those taxes. And I resist talking in those, those little silos.
The other thing is, right now, we're talking about a lease over 20 years, talking about a lease over 30 years in the other one. Maybe it's an upfront just purchase, and maybe that's less. Okay, so we're not going to end up spending that much over 20 years. We're gonna spend less. The other thing I do want to point out on the finance side, and I'm reluctant to talk about this because learned a long time ago when you say that bonds are falling off, everybody starts wanting to borrow things, and that's kind of where this project falls into. But the timing for the taxpayer is very good right now because we have significant amount of bonding falling off in 2025 and 2026 that this can easily absorb, potentially to the point where there may not be any impact to the taxpayer. So that's something we have to think about. But what is also on our mind, just so you get a sense of, the board members, what they're thinking, we also have other competing projects out there too. So for example, our water plant needs about $20 million in investment. So, we need to invest in some of our park projects. So all of this is like in the balance and being decided. But with the debt falling off in the next 2 years, this is a perfect time to take on a capital project like this without having an impact to the taxpayer. But, and I understand what Jim is saying, but we still have to conduct our business. I understand taxpayers got school and county and blah, 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 and all those, we're 10 cents on the dollar, by the way. You all know this because I talk about it every year in my budget form. We're 10 cents on the dollar of your tax dollar. If we have to deliver our services, Jim, we have to deliver our services at what it costs. I can't say, oh, well, the county's taxes.
No,
are
I
high.
understand, I understand, I'm just,
The
I
town has
just
to do
want
what the
for
town has to do.
public gratification that, there is that perspective.
I think the key is that this is being approached in a very balanced way.
Yes.
Where we have top of mind awareness, and I can speak as a social resident, where it just seems for many years that it was just spending willy-nilly. And that is not the case here. We want to be very responsible with the taxpayers' money. Now, with that said, we also want to be cognizant of the fact that we're going to have to conduct business, and we're going to have to make a significant investment, even if it is like, I'm sorry, what was your name again? Judy? Judy, but your comment about St. Peter's and the names just adding on to it becomes almost Frankenstein's monster. That is going to be a significant investment just to do that. So when we have to look at all these dollars and cents and how we're spending your money, you need to make sure that if you're making this investment, just because you're going with a cheaper option doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to cost us more later. And then the gentleman who had to leave, unfortunately, he had a wonderful point about what is our vision? What do we want people to be greeted with when they enter Glenville?
And I think that's important, that's an important.
It is, because you look at Glenville now compared to 10 years ago, and how far it's come. I remember when the Target was out Target, and going in the Fremont Plaza, and you look at it now, and it's bustling, it's thriving, it's continuing to expand and grow, and we want to communicate that to visitors. We want to communicate that we are a thriving community. We don't want to have this kind of duct tape and bubble gum town hall. Yeah, it's for people to come and see and get a first impression of what.
Yeah, at the same time, I'd like to see something that the community can be proud of, and it's emblematic and symbolic of the spirit of the community.
Absolutely, and that all comes down to balance. It's about how do we do that? How do we capture that vision, but also be very respectful of taxpayer money at the same time and make sure we do it wisely. And I'm confident that they're gonna do that.
So to Amanda's point, this has been,
Yeah, and it's not to say,
Whatever it is.
it's not to say that pride can't occur and be, evoked from this building, on a remake. It's not to say that can't happen at this building. All those things,
Roadblocks or whatever's right here, we're over there, and that's how it is.
it is a big plus for this site, that this is what people are used to. This is where they come to for a meeting, they come to pay their taxes, they come to, whatever the need is, for a town business, they come here. And they've got used to it.
the only thing, and I don't disagree with what you're all saying, the only thing to weigh against that is we're on very valuable property from a tax base point of view, where if we go to a place that is already not on the tax roll or isn't going to be on the tax roll because of whatever, this can become a valuable tax base for the taxpayers. And part of our vision and strategy has been to diversify and grow our tax base. So that's the devil advocate of that argument, is that having a municipal building in a commercial corridor is expensive. The opportunity, you've lost the cost of the revenue that it can bring in. That's the only thing. Not saying right or wrong or different. I don't have any preconceived, to Amanda's point, we've been at this for 8 years, and we're not making quick decisions here. We're taking very deliberate decisions. And this gentleman said it's going to take a while. I'm never going to see this building. This isn't going to be for me. I'll be dead, I think, by the time this building's built. But I don't have any preconceived ideas myself. I want to see something that's functional for our employees and our residents, safe, efficient, beautiful for the town, has the vision that we're all just talked about, people can be proud of, and the irony is we joke about it a lot here, you know, it'll be built, and before I can move to my office, you guys will vote me out for the cost of it. So, I mean, but I don't know. We'll continue to engage. For us, I hope it's clear. It's also important that we want to engage the community. We do not want to go forward without the community being involved or at least aware of what's going on. So we're going to continue to have these conversations. I think that Brian, we're probably going to go back to the three respondents, give feedback to what we're hearing. We'll try to come back to the public with maybe sharpened numbers and a little more focus, maybe a little more vision at that point. I would say in the next 30 to 60 days. We're not making rash decisions, but I don't want to continue. We've been at this 8 years. We've seen everything. We've looked at everything. We know generally what makes sense and what doesn't, and we should be able to come to a decision fairly quickly at this point. Any other questions or comments on this? I say follow the website. We'll put notices for these meetings on the website. Sign up for news and announcements if you don't have it, because you'll get the agenda sent to you when it's ready. And we'll just keep the conversation going. Look for something in the next 30 to 60 days, probably is the next time we'll get together on it. Anything else? Thank you. We have one more item on our agenda you can stay for if you like. I do have to call our attorney, and I am going to let folks know here that I'm going to go sit down, so they're just going to look at a blank wall. But let me just get. The next item on the agenda is the potential. I'm never going to get my $1.5 million from the state because Jim wants to sue the state. Governor's never going to sign off on it now.
Nothing like living under the thumb of retribution.
Hey, Colleen, it's Chris. How are you? Good. We just got to the Article 7 section. Can I put you on speaker? Oh, thank you. Sorry to impede on reading. I should start. All right, I'm going to put you on speaker. You have a pretty good sized room here, so just so you know. Okay, so on the phone is Colleen Pearson. She's our attorney to the town, and she's going to lead us in a discussion on Article 7. Correct, Colleen?
Correct. Article 7 bills in the budget.
Yes. So Article 7 is a process by which the budget is passed and allows for certain things to happen within that process. And so, Colleen, why don't you just take us through, kind of a general steps on that in context of Councilor Martin's thoughts about potentially bringing lawsuit against the energy law that was passed in the budget.
Sure. So, basically Article 7 just comes from the article of the New York State Constitution that governs the budget process, but typically it's now used as a term to refer to policy measures that are implemented through the budget process. And usually policy implemented through the budget is closely tied to an appropriation of money. And so over the years, we've seen a reoccurring pattern of policy being implemented by executives that are unrelated to any specific appropriation or pot of money. And so with the measure that that Mr. Martin is talking about, that was a policy measure implemented through a budget process that was largely held up, especially this year, by the legislators and the executive contemplating all these different policy measures like bail reform, things like that. And so we've seen over the years how much it holds up the budget process as well. And the only other thing is, the executive a lot of times strongholds the legislature into passing these policy measures by putting them into bills often referred to as the big uglies, which are over 100 pages long, containing all these different things. And a lot of times, due to lots of different things, the legislature doesn't have much choice but to pass them. And so I think that's what we've seen here with this measure banning the gas stoves.
So, I guess, Jim, you wanna assert that it wasn't really the proper way to do it?
Well, I guess, I'm still not hearing then what is the procedure under which, because I understand, my experience in, dealing with municipal law, state law, and so on, is, you want to attack these things from a procedural point of view. I'm not seeing the policy, I'm not making judgments about, being pro-electricity or pro-net, any of that. I want to focus on the procedural aspect of this. So procedurally, what is the justification for a measure that's going to be inserted into the building code outlawing natural gas in a budget?
So I think it's a twofold analysis. We would all have to look at, and I think maybe the executive would have to explain what particular pot of money this program, this policy measure is tied to. And, I think whatever explanation they have, however they can argue that this policy measure implementing the budget is tied to an appropriation bill, is likely going to be a stretch that may or may not amount to an abuse of power, which is not unusual under the past administrations. And so there's the whole issue of, is this policy measure that was implemented through the budget tied to an appropriation of money, an appropriation bill, or not? And so we would need to find that out in terms of how this was done through the budget. But then if it was implemented properly in the budget, we also then would need to look at, is this measure constitutional? And so it would be a twofold analysis.
Connie, is it a basic premise of something like this that, the justification for a measure such as this is that there is an emergency that's been identified, a problem of severity, and therefore we need to appropriate funds to deal with this emergency problem?
Well, then, it would be a question of, did they appropriate money for this?
Well, first of all, because my concern is, and this is where my problem with this originated from, is if that is in fact the case, if this is identified as an emergency, well, the emergencies have two components to them. And I really want to get into the nuts and bolts of the justification under this provision. That's the real procedural justification. Emergencies have two elements to them. They have the depth of the problem and the length of time that's needed to address it. And I would assert in this case that we have a problem, climate change, but it is almost immeasurable in terms of its effect over time. And it is very difficult to quantify the depth of that problem. In the terms that this law was originally envisioned, we have a problem because think of it. We have got one state in 50, 19 million people, and how many billions of people in the world, and we're going to suggest that changing new homes, not just all the existing homes, that would maybe you could begin to get there to say you're going to have some sort of impact. We're just suggesting, starting in 2025, that all new homes in New York State are going to have to be electric, and we're going to somehow address that problem? What? You're talking, how many new homes are built in New York State in a year? 10,000? And what? I don't see where this meets the standard in the law.
So I think I'll explain that. You're not really saying that the emergency is standard. standard is it has to be attached to appropriations. Yeah.
It should. I mean, that's what the budget.
The money to fix the problem, that's my point, but this is not.
But emergency is not one of the criteria for this Article 7, correct?
No, an emergency is not something that, is typically dealt with through the budget. That's not what the budget process is for.
So what is this addressing?
Appropriations. So there has to be some connection to the budget, is what I'm hearing from your colleagues.
There should be, yes. The budget, the reason that typically they put policy in the budget is when you need money to fund the program that you're trying to, or the policy you're trying to implement through the budget.
How does it change the state building code with the enforcement officer assigned to the municipality? How is that?
These are all questions that we just don't have answers to yet.
I mean, tangentially, they can take any number of NYSERDA programs or any, their energy policies through NYSERDA or NYSERDA or whatever, through the Public Service Commission, and probably have some connection there. But how would we get to the bottom of that, Colleen? Short of a lawsuit and trying to get in discovery, how do we get to the bottom of it?
Well, I mean, so we would need to take a close look at the budget that was just implemented and passed by the legislature and see if there are lines of appropriations that could possibly relate to this program. But the trouble is that the courts don't rule on whether a piece of legislation is a bad piece of legislation or a good piece of legislation. And, the legislature passes a lot of bad policy every single day. That's just the fact of the matter. And it's not the job of the courts to come in and say, legislature, you passed a really bad piece of legislation. We think it should be overturned. That's not what they do. They look at if something's unconstitutional or procedurally was defective, but they're not going to weigh in on the merits and how good a piece of legislation is.
And that's what I was saying in my earlier comment. I understand that. So is there a procedural defect?
Well, it's tricky because there hasn't been much case law on the budget process. We have the Silver v. Pataki case, and that has guided us. But we have to look into that. We have to really see, is the fact that this may or may not be tied to an appropriation, is that an issue? The budget is supposed to be outlining how the money of the state is spent. And I do think that there has been an abuse of power by the governors over the past few years in putting policy that they want to see get passed into budgets. They make the passage of a bill that they want passed conditional on a bill that the legislature may want passed. Because the budget isn't just one bill, it's a series of many different pieces of legislation in one package. And so the governor and the division of budget has many different ways in which they get what they want. And, is that an abuse of power? I don't know. But I think this gas stove ban may be the result of that type of working,
So
unfortunately.
why don't we do this for an idea to go forward? Because I read a little thing today that this should be our last resort. So what if we pass a resolution in opposition of this on procedure, not on environment, on procedure, and direct that, we send, maybe Colleen, your office sends a letter to the governor, the legislature, asking for this information.
Yeah, we can do that. And I think, it's also just aside from how it was implemented, I do think that it is possibly unconstitutional just because it violates the provisions of the Constitution, which grant local governments the power to control their own property. So, there's that issue as well.
From a local government perspective. What about an individual perspective?
I would have to look into that. I mean, that there may be violations of individual constitutional rights. Yeah, we can look into that.
All right, so why don't we put a resolution together opposing this on procedure and directing that, your office draft a letter for my signature to the governor, legislature, questioning the appropriation line, asking for how does that connect? And then also, if you guys can research that constitutional question.
Sure.
So, I'm leaving this conversation with some hope. That there is a case to be made here. That's a question.
She lost
You know,
connection.
I don't know, because again, it's a high bar. I don't think it's
No, I
going to
understand
be
that.
easy. The government passes really crappy measures all the time, and this is one of them. But whether there can be a lawsuit, I really don't know. I don't know yet. We have to look into that.
That's fair.
We have to build our building before 2025, so we have gas appliances. Oh, yeah.
That's right, Chris. That's right.
Well, and the one thing I want to be clear, and this is for the benefit of, the residents in the room tonight. I don't say this, I'm not trying to be flippant, and I'm not trying to be, just this, radical. First, I take matters of government as my fellow board members don't very seriously. And, I don't take this matter lightly, because I am well aware that taxpayers' money being invested, in this investigation, informs on a resolution, and if there is a lawsuit, that will be how it's paid for. So I want to be very careful about this, and very, judicious at our end in our investigation. And if the investigation results in, a no, then it's a no. And I understand that, and I will accept and respect that decision. But I thought it was incumbent upon myself as an elected official to say at some point enough is enough. And somebody's got to push back.
So, understand, it's not going to show without any of the issues of the
That's correct. I am all for clean energy. That is not the issue. But when policies of this type are made, I've worked in housing rehabilitation, through governmental programs. I know for a fact in this state, in this federal government, in this state, has invested hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in natural gas heating appliances to these programs. And for what end? All of a sudden, within a relatively short time frame, we're going to push all that aside, and that's fine, but it's got to be done in a manner that, the public can afford, particularly our most income challenged members of that public. And these are the people they're going to bear the brunt of this work. And what I thought was especially egregious in this case, and again, what caused me to speak out was several weeks ago, the state on one side of the mouth was talking about the need for affordable housing, and affordable housing price again. Another word we use for the word price. And now we have a climate change crisis. So now this crisis apparently is trumping this one, because you are going to contribute to the affordable housing problem with this measure. You are. The three tenets of housing are cost of housing are real property taxes, mortgage, and tenants. And that's what it takes a person to live in a home. And do this, they're pushing that affordable housing issue further along and accelerating. And that's what I meant about this irrational.
So do we,
And-
go ahead, Colleen.
No, the only other thing I was going to say is, I don't want to necessarily characterize this as an investigation. There's nothing criminal that's been done here. But I do think that it's fair, and I think it's great that you're looking into this, because the last thing I just want to say is, when policy is implemented in this way through the budget, we all know that budget time for legislators, they're up at all hours of the night. It's a very trying time for everybody. And when it's passed through a budget bill in this way, the bills don't get debated on the floor like they would if they were introduced in the normal manner through both houses of the legislature. And so the debate that you're having right now is not something that was had because it was passed through the budget. And so I think that's something that needs to be spoken about.
We got three people in the room that really made the decision. We all know the legislature cedes their votes to the leadership in those negotiations, and that's just that's how bad policy is made.
Exactly.
I think there's a mistake where it can be done very well. Like, you know, the kind of work I do, I also work in environmental assessment. The environmental assessment form went through, I don't know how many public hearings in terms of changes to the form. And it was 3 and 4 years in making those revisions to the environmental assessment form. And they went out on a county level, they sought input from involved agencies, and involved parties that use that form quite regularly. Where was that process with this? Willy-nilly, we just decide that we're gonna eliminate natural gas? What?
So I think we have a way forward. We're gonna do this formalization of a resolution that starts the process, Colleen, of trying to seek information from the governor's office, from the legislative leaders. We're looking at the constitutionality of it separately. So maybe you can look and see if the town board has subpoena powers, because Jim wants to subpoena the governor.
Oh,
That last part was a joke.
that would be very entertaining.
But I think those are the two things we can do right now.
Yeah, I appreciate the other members' support of it. I know, I kind of led the charge of this, but, at some point, you just have to say enough.
No, we don't disagree, Jim. I just think I'm more kind of with Colleen right here on this is Article 7. Probably something that, good luck getting a court order. I mean, we go to the Supreme Court maybe, but we go to the health division. Is that what judge? I mean,
It's very disheartening to sit here as I majored in government in school. I've always respected, the public process. And to sit here and hear that kind of a statement from someone as learned as you are in government over the years, that's very disheartening. I mean, I've already considered this for the public, I don't want this to be retribution on the town, and I hope that's not the case. We watch the state grants all the time. I don't want to be, there's that problem child lender, well, we're gonna, that's gonna be the case. This is a honest, genuine concern, and there's a better way to do this, an honest and genuine concern that better way was not taken.
So Colleen, I know we're keeping you from your event, so I think
And thank you, Colleen, for all your work on this.
the board, and kind of, they all shook their heads when I said that, so that's the direction, if that's okay with you. Did we lose you, Colleen? We kept her from the event. I wonder if her phone died. Are you there, Colleen? Colleen?
Yes, I'm
Okay,
here.
all right. Did
I was on mute, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So you heard us.
Yes,
Okay, that direction is okay with you?
I think that's okay.
Okay.
But I will not investigate the subpoena power for you, Mr. Mark.
No, that's fine. I'm not that crazy.
Thank you, Colleen. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Sir, you have a question? No, it's right and proper for folks to express their opinions to our elected officials. If people do it to us, we do it to them, and so I hope other communities, I think Jimmy said this earlier, other communities join in on this, and I know it's garnered a lot of attention. I've never heard Glenville be the subject of WGY talk show morning. When I got in my truck today, I almost died. Thanks, Jim. I know, I'm just trying to get my coffee and get to work. But I think we're set on that. Everyone's good? All right. There's no other business, so we're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes. Let me just end the stream here.